Movie making is a pretty organised affair, but the sheer number of moving parts also ensures that things don't always go right. While this can often result in scenes being redone over and over again in what would be Kubrick's wet dream, in other instances filmmakers simply decide to incorporate the mistake. Why fix what ain't broken, right? Or what can have a plaster stuck on it and be ignored at least? And of course, the beloved horror genre is where just going with it thrives, where smart or sometimes oblivious filmmakers have included an accident in the final cut of their film, and in turn only enhance the eerie, unsettling atmosphere, as things that aren't supposed to be there are the bread and butter of making a truly spooky film, really. I am the thriving mistake, Ash from What Culture, and these are 10 ways horror movies got scarier by accident. 10. A visible crew member was kept in the film. The Descent. Neil Marshall's absolutely brilliant low-budget horror film The Descent follows a group of 6 spelunkers who, upon entering a cave system, find themselves preyed upon by crawlers residing within. It's an exceptionally atmospheric and unsettling movie in its own right, albeit one elevated even further by an on-set mistake which snuck its way into the final cut. Shortly after release, some fans reported that they could see a crawler sneaking around the caves early in the movie before they're actually introduced. On the DVD commentary, Marshall confirmed that this was in fact a total accident. Rather than a crawler deliberately inserted into the scene as an Easter egg, it was a crew member who inadvertently got themselves caught on camera. The visual is thankfully just faint enough that audiences have the opportunity to see it but not quite realise exactly what they're seeing. Within the context of the movie itself though, it works as some solid foreshadowing for the subterranean horrors to come. 9. The phone booth glass wasn't supposed to shatter. The Birds. Late in Alfred Hitchcock's suspense classic The Birds, protagonist Melanie ends up seeking refuge in a phone booth during the birds' attack. But her sanctuary is quickly disrupted once the birds attack the booth and smash one of the windows, prompting Mitch to rescue her. While there are disputed accounts of exactly how the scene was shot, there is a consensus that the booth was actually supposed to be fitted with shatterproof glass, ensuring it wouldn't crack when the mechanical birds slammed into it. But due to the prop department having no shatterproof glass available, regular glass was fitted without Tippi Hedren's knowledge, and caused superficial cuts. Hedren continues to insist to this day that Hitchcock had the glass swapped out to punish her for rejecting his romantic advances. And that only makes Hedren's subsequent, genuinely scared reaction ramp up the scene's already pronounced sense of terror twofold, really. 8. A terrified actress peed herself for real. Pieces. Cult classic 1982 slasher film Pieces revolves around a serial killer murdering young co-eds at a Boston college campus, using their body parts to make a human jigsaw puzzle. Yep, it is a deliciously shameless slice of 80s exploitation, full of graphic nudity and brutal violence, while demonstrating a crucial self-awareness of its own sleaziness. But there is one scene where things got a little hairier by mistake, and that is when poor Susie gets sliced in half with a chainsaw whilst changing in the locker room. Moments before her demise though, we briefly see Susie peeing herself in fright, and members of the film's cast and crew have stated that actress Letitia Marfil legitimately urinated herself from being within shredding distance of a real chainsaw. After all, this was a low-budget horror production, where acquiring a fake chainsaw would have been more expensive and bothersome than just using a real one, no matter the PTSD it clearly appears to have afforded the cast. 7. The suit's design triggers trypophobia in some viewers. The Invisible Man. Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man turned out to be one of the most pleasantly surprising horror films of the past few years. A socially conscious and almost unbearably intense genre offering topped by a fantastic Elizabeth Moss performance. And though the film does a fantastic job mining the suspense of Cecilia being stalked by an invisible enemy, many viewers experienced an added discomfort when she actually discovers the invisible suit and manages to deactivate its cloaking. This reveals a high-tech suit covered in hundreds of small cameras which allow it to project a cloaked visual of the surrounding environment. But it also activated anxiety and unease in viewers suffering from a condition called trypophobia, which is defined by having an aversion to small holes and clusters. Writer-director Whannell consequently apologised for it on Twitter, proving it was not an intentional scare, just really, really gross looking. 6. A crew member resembles a shadowy figure. The Ring. Gore Verbinski's remake of J-horror classic The Ring is an uncommonly effective Hollywood redo, filled to the brim with creepy imagery, well-executed shocks, and a cracking performance from Naomi Watts. But there is one additionally creepy moment that actually snuck in by accident, and it occurs late in the film when Rachel and her ex-boyfriend return to her sister Ruth's home to pick up their son. For about a second, a sublimely creepy, shadowy figure is briefly visible in front of a window in the background. And while this was clearly just a crew member who carelessly wound up in the shot, the moody lighting accentuates the film's well-honed anxiety perfectly. Some fans have suggested the shadow might in fact be that of Ruth simply waiting for her sister to leave. But even if that was true, why on earth would Verbinski frame a silhouette with such intentional creepiness? 5. Unsettling carpet continuity. The Shining. As masterful and exacting a filmmaker as Stanley Kubrick was, even he wasn't beyond a mistake or two, as evidenced by this bizarre continuity error that occurs during the horror masterpiece, The Shining. While Danny Torrance is playing with his toy cars and Jack's tennis ball rolls towards him, keep your eyes peeled on the pattern of the carpet that Danny is kneeled on. Between cuts, the orientation of the iconic hexagonal carpet design flips, a gaffe that has been fiercely debated by fans ever since. There are those Kubrick obsessives who simply feel that the director was too meticulous to make such a blatant mistake, and that it must have been done on purpose in order to signify something. Others, however, are more willing to confess the flaws of their heroes, and admit that Kubrick simply screwed up while blocking and editing the scene. The brilliance, of course, is that the mistake only enhances the film's already significant sense of reality-bending unease. 4. The cast got lost for real. The Blair Witch Project. The entire groundbreaking conceit of the Blair Witch Project is that its handheld, found footage style and unknown cast duped audiences into believing that it might actually be real footage we're seeing. Back in 1999, at least. But one of the big reasons the movie works as well as it does is because principal actors Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard were largely left to improvise the experience from a shell script. Filmmakers Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, meanwhile, provided scares throughout the night and also kept in occasional contact via walkie-talkies to provide directions and ensure the cast's safety. The actors were also given a pre-programmed GPS to guide them and provide an escape route in event of disaster. Yet, even in spite of this, they reportedly got lost 3 times during the shoot, on one occasion even seeking refuge at a nearby house on the edge of the woods. Between these incidents, it is easy to see how the cast's very real frustration led to their characters' increasing fear and hysteria throughout the film. Quite brilliantly, fact and fiction were melded into an 81-minute final cut from over 20 hours of footage. 3. A Mistimed Explosive enhanced the intensity. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. The brilliant 1978 remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers memorably climaxes with protagonist Matthew Bennell burning down a warehouse containing a number of alien pods. Matthew then flees the area, only to be chased by a horde of the aliens, with one of them being taken out by an explosion on the exterior of the building while Matthew just barely runs clear of the fire. But this wasn't actually planned at all. Rather, the extra chasing after Donald Sutherland mistimed his cue and ended up legitimately engulfed in a gigantic explosion, suffering severe burns as a result. Director Philip Kaufman, though, liked the shot enough to keep it in the film, and by showing how the pods would even run into flames in the pursuit of world domination, further ratcheted up the already palpable sense of bleak hopelessness. 2. A malfunctioning shark prop limited its appearances. Jaws. Perhaps the most iconic ever example of a movie working a technical disadvantage in its favour is Steven Spielberg's blockbuster Jaws. Originally, the film was supposed to extensively show off the shark throughout by way of a series of mechanical shark props. But when these props began to malfunction during shooting, the director was forced to pivot to a more minimalist style. Ingeniously using barrels for the heroes to trap the shark was conceived as a way to keep production filming whilst the props were being repaired, visually signifying the shark's presence and ultimately enhancing the film's prevailing fear of the ocean deep. This is proof perfect of just how fortuitous an accident can truly be in Hollywood, forcing a wunderkind filmmaker to pull out every creative stop to get the job done regardless. And most critics tend to agree that Jaws is ultimately all the better for how sparingly it physically features the shark, so, you know, there you go. 1. The bystander was an assistant who stumbled onto set. Irreversible. Gaspar Noé's experimental psychological horror film Irreversible is one of the most disturbing and unforgettable movies of all time. Infamously remembered for both its brutal violence and especially prolonged sequence in which Alex is attacked in an underpass. Perhaps the most chilling and unsettling moment in the entire 9-minute scene is when a shadowy figure enters the underpass in the background and after seeing what's going on for a few seconds, backs out and leaves. As brilliantly horrifying a commentary as this was on bystander behaviour, it wasn't in any way intentional, and simply a result of an assistant wandering into the set when he didn't realise No was actually filming. Yet no ultimately kept it in the film, as it only enhances the scene's already nauseating quality and firmly underlines the audience's own complicity in watching this savage act on screen.